Storm, earth, and fire, heed my call.
What's up everyone, I'm Waves and today I got another M+ commentary for you guys. In this video I tried a little bit of a different build to what we usually play in keys. It's actually kind of a hybrid build because people on stream wanted me to play Wolf Bones in a key and play it with like hot hands and alley blast and stuff like that, but I don't think that it's the best way to play a key, to play hot hands and alley blast. I wasn't a big fan of the idea, so I figured some stuff out and came up with like a hybrid build to play, and I will just explain the build in game right now. Show you guys what talents I use, what gear I use, what conduits I use, and then we will just jump into a recorded key that we played on stream, and then we will see how it went when we played it. So the build basically has me playing Wolf Bones. We're playing a lot of haste. We're playing a lot of mastery. We're also playing a lot of verse and crit. Like crit, mastery, and verse are pretty much around the same. It is actually kind of important that you have more mastery than you have crit though. Keep that in mind, because that becomes important for like the tormented effects, right? For the anima powers, that Champion's Brand gives you mastery instead of crit. That's really important. Other than that, just make sure to have the Wolf Bones legendary, have a lot of haste, and then the other stats basically. When it comes to talents, now this is something that I have to explain, like how the spec or like the build exactly is supposed to work. We're playing Forceful Winds, Stormflurry, Hailstorm, Alley Spirits, and we also, on top of these talents, play the Conduits, Unruly Winds, and Chill to the Core. And the thing is, the idea of the build is to never have burst. You never have burst with this build, but you always have really high consistent damage. If you play packs of like 6 targets, that's gonna be perfect. If you have more, that's fine. If you have less, that's fine as well. Your damage output will be high and sustain throughout the whole dungeon, basically, right? But you can never expect like having the biggest burst ever. Like Doomwinds is gonna be way more burst. It's just all about consistency. And that is why, because we play Wolf Bones and generating Maelstrom weapon stacks resets the cooldown or like lowers the cooldown of our wolves, right? And we play Elemental Spirits. That's the reason why we want to generate as many Maelstrom weapon stacks as we can. So basically we play Hailstorm, a lot of mastery, as I said, benefits Hailstorm because we do more frost damage. It's pretty good in keys anyways, especially in fortified weeks. And since we play Chill to the Core, each target hit with Frost Shock gives us a 28% chance at 239 item levels for Conduit here to generate 2 Maelstrom weapon stacks, which potentially you could even get more than 2 Maelstrom weapon stacks, and it takes a huge chunk of your wolves cooldown off. And it actually happens in some packs that you have wolves ready right when your other wolves run out, right? So you can just chain wolves the whole time and have like a big uptime not only on the wolves but also on the buffs that they provide to your abilities. And then because I didn't want to play Alley Blast and Hot Hand, to have like more like Storm Strike and Wind Fury damage and stuff like that, we also play Forceful Winds and Stormflurry. And because typically with Wolf Bones in single target in raid you would play Magma Fist, but it's kinda useless I would say, because with Hailstorm we don't really Flame Shock that often, if at all. We can play Unruly Winds, and Unruly Winds works really well together with Forceful Winds and Stormflurry, right? And so it just creates this cycle of just resetting cooldowns, doing tons of damage with Hailstorm, doing tons of damage with Chain Lightning, and it just flows together and it feels really good actually. And yeah, I would say we just jump right into the key, see how it went, and then I will just commentate over it and we will just talk about the gameplay a little bit. And I would say we just start right up. It was at the other side, it was at 18 I think, which by the way, it's kind of a risk to test builds like this in in strangers 18 keys. Like it's definitely a huge risk that you take, like you could potentially just ruin someone's key. But we play the first pack here, and this is exactly what I'm saying. We use Bloodlust here on a big pack. I got aggro, so I kited for a little bit. You can't expect the biggest burst damage out of this build, as I already said. Like you can see I get to 20k. 20k is pretty good, but I won't reach to like 40, 50k. If I was Doomwinds on this pack with Bloodlust in the beginning, I could have easily done 40k damage, like without a problem. But I can only repeat myself, we're going for sustained damage. Actually, I played this afterwards a couple of times on stream, and I feel like nowadays I'm a little bit more confident with the playstyle. So this one was like, I think it was like the first or second key that I played with this build, and yeah, as I'm saying, you will see. I got the overall damage meter over the other one, so we can always just see how the overall is looking right now. And I figured out that the other side is actually a pretty good key to test this, because we generally have like large packs of enemies that we play, and typically also like trash packs that live for a long time, where the high consistency of this build definitely gets to shine. When it comes to the wolves, I feel like fire wolves are the worst ones that we could roll for this build. So we're always happy when we get double lightning wolves, double frost wolves, or like a frost and a lightning wolf. Those are really good combinations. If we have like one fire wolf, that's fine. But I think that rolling double fire wolves would be the worst, as we just did here. And yeah, you can see these were 3 targets, I think. If I paid close enough attention, 3 targets. And you can see I'm sustained at like 9k. And the more enemies we have, until it reaches like 6, then it falls off a little bit, because Hailstorm makes Frost Shock cleave to like 6 targets, right? And then afterwards it falls off a little bit. Obviously we still have Sundering and like Crash and stuff like that isn't affected by that. But yeah, just to keep that in mind, like on really huge packs, like 20 enemies or whatever, people will do more damage than we will, obviously. So yeah, just keep that in mind. We go up to 54% mastery with the first Champions brand, as I said. If you play this and you are looking for a little bit more single target damage, because we will see on bosses how the single target damage is, but if you're looking for a little bit more, you can go Necrotic Dagger instead of Champions brand and one of the Tormented powers. I personally think that with playing this build, you should go double Champions brand, full mastery. Since at least with my gear, I could reach like 60, I think it was 67% mastery. And like your Frost Shock damage will just be like over the roof. It will be insane, for real. And yeah, that's what I'm doing. So you can see another pack. As I said, I don't have burst, but I have sustained like 12 to 13k DPS here, which is nice. And you basically just want to cycle Chain, Crash, and Frost Shock the whole time. And with this build, sometimes, depending on how lucky you are with Chill to the Core, it may actually happen that you're generating so many Maelstrom weapon stacks that you can't even get all of the Hailstorm buffs out, right? Because you still have a cooldown on Frost Shock. So sometimes you chain, you get a Hailstorm buff, right? And then your Frost Shock will still be on cooldown from the last one. So you're already at 10 stacks again. And if you're already at 10 stacks again, you just send another Chain Lightning and override your Hailstorm buff. But sometimes there's nothing you can do, because you're generating so many Maelstrom weapon stacks, which just tells you like how good the intention of this build works. And by the way, just a little heads up, because especially on my last video, on the Cold Hands video, a lot of people missed the point that I'm not saying that this is going to be the new best build that we can ever play. I'm trying to have fun, experiment, find new things that we can play, give you guys a little bit of variety if you want to play something different, if you want to try something else, if you don't want to get into playing the same thing over and over again and getting bored by it. Even though I still enjoy Doomwinds, don't get me wrong, like in Keys, I just want to test something else and see if other things can work as well, which is why I came up with this build. So don't take this as like, oh, this is the new M+ build that everyone has to play. That's definitely not the point of this video. The point of this video is to show you something a little bit different. It's fun to play and to figure out with you guys how it can work in dungeons, if it's going to be competitive, if it can be competitive. And yeah, that's basically what we're going for. We're in the Ardenweald chapter right now of the dungeon, and you could already see we had like a lot of enemies. Again, Unholy Decay out DPSing me, Boomkin out DPSing me, because they have way more burst damage for like huge packs of enemies. But you can see my damage stays consistent. Like I'm still at over 14k DPS. Now we have 3 targets. Now he's pulling in the Tormented guy as well, which is good for us. Like with this build, it's actually nice to always have like a lot of targets that we can spread our Frost Shocks to. And even those bindings and such, it's always nice to have like big AoE damage. And I'm actually kind of excited to show you guys the boss fights, because it's actually a little bit surprising playing like single target fights with this build. Something was happening, especially in this key, that I wasn't expecting playing this build. So definitely stay tuned until we get to the single target fights, because that's going to be interesting as well. And you can see it's exactly what I'm saying, like that they have more burst than me. But you can see I just take over now in the DPS meter, right? Because after their cooldowns are over, everyone's damage is falling off. Like if Unholy cooldowns and Boomkin cooldowns are over, the damage like comes down by a lot. But with this build, the only burst that we really have is Wolves. And Wolves resets the whole time. We will permanently have Wolves up. Like you can see now we do a big pull. And this is probably, if you've ever played the other side in Ardenweald and High Keys before, this pack is gonna take a while to kill. And now we can see just how this consistency works, right? So right here I just really tried hard to not get aggro. The Wolves just despawned and the next one will be ready exactly now. Like, you can see how it just cycles, right? I wasn't even playing the rotation properly in the beginning because I was taking care that I wouldn't pull aggro in the beginning. And now I can actually, like, start generating mates from weapon stacks and resetting stuff and just playing the rotation. Wolves run out in 1 second, they are gone, and the next ones are ready. Do you see how this works? Like, that's exactly what we're going for, just high consistency. Unholy DK, out DPSing me, doesn't matter. He has cooldowns, and he has Epidemic, or whatever it's called, that does like tons and tons of damage on so many targets. But I'm sustained at 18k, even went up to 19k now. I got the next Wolves. I feel like these were like the 4th set of Wolves on this one pull. And you can see what the idea is, right, with this build. Like, I can only repeat myself. We are not going for the biggest damage. We're going for like consistency, because that's fun. And it's something different. With Doom Winds, on a 60-second cooldown, to be fair, 60 seconds is really low. So on every other pack, we can just use Doom Winds, and we can do burst damage like this, and then it goes down again. With this build, we don't have that. We don't have that burst, and then it goes down again. And we also don't have a pack in between where we don't have cooldowns. We always have cooldowns. We always have something to press. And even if Wolves are not ready, Chain with Frost Shock for Hailstorm does so much consistent damage anyways that you don't even need to have Wolves all the time. You have them most of the time, but if you don't, you still do damage, because especially with the Mastery, it just does so much damage. And you can see that. And I'm really excited to show you guys the overall at the end of the key. So I would say it's, when it comes to the gameplay, if it's difficult to play this build, I wouldn't say so. It's more so that if you're used to playing Doom Winds, it will take a while to get used to this build, because it's so counterintuitive, I would say. Like, you have to play really different, and you have to get your mind used to playing it like this. That the most of your damage comes from Hailstorm Frost Shocks, right? So that is what you have to work around. And by doing that, by working around, like, chaining to get the Hailstorm buff, and then buffing your Crash, and then using Crash, and then, you know, that kind of cycle. Also generating mates and weapon stacks to reset your Wolves, and then to always like use your Wolves, like getting used to having your cooldown ready every 20 seconds or something like that. That is also something that you have to get used to. And then in single target situations, your rotation changes a little bit, obviously, because you won't use Chain Lightning the whole time. So it kind of shifts a little bit. And that is, I don't know, I think it's interesting. I think it's fun. Actually on stream, a lot of people, like on the next stream after we found this out, which you can see it was the 13th when I played this, now it's the 18th today, on later streams after this one, people came up to me in my stream and they were like, bro, I tested your hybrid build in keys, and it was actually fun, and I actually like did so much damage, and I did this amount of damage and that amount of damage. I played it in this key. Oh, in this key it worked great, in this other dungeon it didn't really work great. Stuff like that, right? And that's exactly what I wanted to reach with this, to get like a discussion going, to get people into trying new things, to get people just to be open about things. Like, I feel like nowadays we're in this meta where everyone, no matter the content, always just wants to do the best they can do, which is fine, right? But I feel like within that mentality of like always trying to be the best, and oh, I have to do that amount of overall damage, or people won't invite me back into a key, or I have to prove them like how much damage I can do, stuff like that, right? That people within that mentality forget the fun of testing new things. They are so afraid of trying something that is not like considered the best, that they miss out on a lot of like potential fun. Like, this build is a lot of fun to play. If I always just went for like the most overall damage that I could do, I would have just played Doom Winds, and then I would have been fine, right? Like, my overall damage is pretty good with Doom Winds, I'm by no means like someone that pushes like 25 keys or whatever. I'm not like the god of M+, but I would say I'm kind of decent, right? Like I play, I don't know, like high-ish keys, what most people would say. Definitely not high keys, but I'm also pugging 99% of my keys, so I don't know, I'm just trying to have fun. And yeah, I would be fine if I just only played Doom Wins, but that's not fun. Like, I mean, it is fun, but for me it's also fun to, as I said, test new things. And I mean, you can see how long this pull is going on for. There are so many enemies. In the beginning, they out-DPS'd me. Now, after like, I don't know how many minutes of fighting this one pack, I'm still at almost 16k DPS, while they drop down to like 11 or 12k DPS. Like the sustain, it just shows me that what I thought about from like knowing the spells and knowing how they interact and thinking about how I could like combine talents and conduits, actually like seeing that it works out the way that I imagined it, which is nice. And then this is the first boss fight, like the first single target boss fight. And I was like, okay, my single target is gonna suck with this build. That's what I thought. I don't have Doom Wins. I don't have Ascendance. I don't have either of that, right? But actually what I ended up seeing is this. The Unholy is still out DPSing me. Like there's no question about that, right? But my damage is still at like over 9k, right? And that's the thing. Like, this is not bad single target damage. It would be higher with Doom Wins, don't get me wrong. It would 100% be better. It would even be better if I played Wolf Bones with Hot Hands. If I get procs, right? If I don't get procs, I mean, that's a whole different story. But this works. And I already had my second Wolves, because resetting Wolves doesn't only work in AoE. Yes, AoE makes it better with Chain Lightning and then Hailstorm Frost Shocks, because Chill to the Core generates you so many Maelstrom weapon stacks that you constantly reset Wolves. But these are my third Wolves in this fight, because with Unruly Winds and with Stormflurry and Forceful Winds, we generate so many Maelstrom stacks as well that we keep constantly resetting Wolves, even in single target. Yes, it's a bit slower than AoE, but it doesn't mean that it's bad. And it shows. Like, his damage is going down significantly. Mine as well, by the way. But yeah, it's just working, you know? And there's also one thing that I found out afterwards, after playing this, that I think if you have a high item level PvP badge trinket, like the on-use 1 minute trinket, that would be better than the Guardian trinket that I'm playing in this key. In later keys, I tested badge instead of Guardian trinket, and I really liked the results. So you can test around, but I think because we're going for, like, mostly for just this big, like, Frost Shock damage and, like, AoE spread cleave damage and stuff like that, I think badge with the high main stat is actually better than running Guardian trinket. The only thing that you have to keep in mind is that when you care about your stats, right? And as I said earlier, you want to have more mastery than you want to have crit to make sure that Champion's Brand gives you mastery instead of crit. If you equip your badge trinket, it has a ton of crit on it. So you gotta make sure that equipping that doesn't push your crit value over your mastery value. The Champion's Brand is still gonna give you mastery, because I played a key on stream and I completely forgot about that. Equipped the badge and we started playing the key. And I got my first Champion's Brand, and I was like, oh my god, my Frost Shock is going to be so much better now. And then I checked my stats, and my mastery didn't change, and then I'm like, bro, I actually just got crit. And then basically, it still performed pretty good, but obviously it was way worse than it was supposed to be. So right here, we play an Enraged Spirit. We don't pull anything else on top of it. It's a fortified 18, by the way, so the rage is pretty sketchy here. I use Astral Shift to survive it. Just to make sure to help the healer a little bit out. I don't know. I think they will earn it. Like, use the earn on it. The Druid is already walking there. Yeah, now he's pulling it over. And as soon as he starts to rage again, the Druid is gonna click the earn and stun it. He's actually very late on it, so we almost die here. But then he finally gets the stun, and we get to kill it. And you can see, again, this is a single target mob. It's not a boss, but it's a trash fight. And I'm the only one that does, like, decent amount of damage, right? I mean, the Unholy was okay, but at the end of the day, I was the only one that really did damage here, right? And we can already see one of the 4 bosses is dead. We have 55% of the trash done, and I'm at 12.3k DPS. Like, I know the key isn't done, but you can see how it works out, right? How the consistency, especially in this dungeon, works in my favor. Now we pull 7 targets, which is almost like perfect for this build, right? So what we want to do, again, as always, we want to try to not die, obviously, to aggro. And, oh, actually, now that I think about it, this is, by the way, also really good for this build. You can go away from mobs, you can kite mobs, and not lose a lot of damage. Chain Lightning is unranged, Frost Shock is unranged, Crash Lightning has a lot of range, and the only real time that you need to step close to it, obviously you want to have auto attacks the whole time, right? Like, having uptime on enemies is still better, but you will still have high damage if you have to go away from the enemies compared to like playing Doom Winds or any other build, right? So this is also like very beneficial, because especially if you pull aggro and you have to kite or you have to go away, you're not instantly useless. You're not instantly just in Ghost Wolf with Astral Shift up and healing yourself and kiting, throwing out Earthbinds and Capacitor Totems. You're actually running away, turning around, sending Chain Lightning, sending Frost Shocks, sending whatever, and still keeping like a decent amount of damage on the pack while you're kiting. So definitely a huge positive on that note as well. And now we get into the Mana Storms side, and we get the Tormented, the Lieutenant here, and want to kill that one. Again, single target enemy. Fate Transfusion, very good for these single target situations, because we don't have that much single target as we would have with Doom Winds. But Fate Transfusion always works single target. Fate Transfusion always gives you a lot of damage. And these are exactly the moments that you want to use that for. Pretty much with this build, if you always play like huge packs of like 5 or 6 enemies, I typically never really use Fate Transfusion, which in 1 key we even try to play Naya to give me a reason to cast Fate Transfusion to get the mastery to buff my Frost Shock damage even more. But in my opinion, playing Kurain and getting that first strike is overall just gonna give you like way more damage than playing Naya. Naya felt a little bit weird, at least to me. So without Naya, there's not really any reason to press Fate Transfusion outside of single target situations, right? And here, by the way, I got my second Champion's Brand, and I went up to 66% mastery, which I could imagine, like as I showed you, I have a lot of crit and verse as well. But I could imagine if you could get like a set with way more mastery, this could even do more damage in dungeons where you have more like big AoE trash compared to bosses. Because obviously on bosses, mastery is not going to be as beneficial, because you're not going to be frost shocking as much. I mean, you're going to be frost shocking, but you're not doing as much damage with frost shock as you would on like a 6 or 7 target pack, right? So yeah, if there's like a dungeon with like a lot of trash, a lot of AoE fights, I think that a lot of mastery could help you with that. And so here we had another single target enemy. Even without Fate Transfusion, I did the most damage to the single target guy. So, like you can see, obviously they sometimes have more AoE burst. But when it comes to single target, I'm even still beating them. I'm beating them on consistency, and I'm beating them on single target damage. So, the build actually not only seems to have like a high consistency, but also seems very versatile in like the situations where you have your damage output, right? So, yeah, it's working pretty good. And I specifically remember in this key, like while playing it, checking out the overall here and there, and every time just being surprised that it's so high. Because you never see those huge burst numbers with this build. You're never really like under the impression of like, oh shit, I'm pumping. I'm doing like big damage, right? You never really have that feeling. You have to realize how good your consistency is before you actually realize, oh shit, I'm actually doing what I'm supposed to be doing here, and not always feel like, oh shit, I'm actually missing out because whatever, right? I don't have the biggest burst. And yeah, I had a useless Ankh there because I died and I should have just waited for them to rest me. Wasted my Ankh, but it's fine. Yeah, we're just gonna get rest. First 2 deaths of the dungeon from me, perfect. That's what we like to see. And now we get into this chapter here with I actually can't remember how we played this. But I think we just invest through it. I think there was a little bit of chaos going on here. I'm not 100% sure though, we have to see. Like as I said, this was like 5 days ago, so I can't remember everything that was going on. So my apologies for not being as prepared. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like for you. For me, it feels like watching this for the first time or experiencing it for the first time. I mean, it is my first time watching it, but I actually played it. So, yeah, now we're just waiting. I think we got in combat here, so I think the skip entirely just failed here. And yeah, it's an 18 though. In an 18, you definitely can have some mistakes and still make up for it. Like it's not the end of the key. We will probably just wait for the druid to stealth through the mobs again and just res us here. So yeah, we will just chill for a second, and yeah, then we continue as soon as we get rest. Actually, if we check the overall damage right now, we can see that the Boomy isn't even playing Venthyr. I thought he was playing Venthyr, but he's playing Night Fae. So that's one reason why you don't see like the typical Moonkin like big damage spikes that we see recently in keys, where Venthyr Boomkins just completely destroy one pack, then they don't do anything, and then they completely destroy a boss or something like that again. That's not happening, even though Convoke is a big damage burst as well. He has better consistent damage than a Venthyr Boomy would have. Okay, so apparently we won't do the skip again. We will just play this dental drill here. And again, I came a little bit late to the pack. Actually, now that I think about it, the Guardian Trinket, if you play the Guardian Trinket with this build, it actually helps with your single target damage a bit. So if that's what you're lacking, I already said you can also just play the Necrotic Dagger as an anima power, right? But you can also go Guardian Trinket, for example, to push your single target damage a little bit, if that's what you're lacking. If you just want to go in for like the full build of just full AoE consistent damage, again, double Champion's Brand, high Mastery, and play Badge. As my second trinket, by the way, because I haven't mentioned it, I'm playing the File of Purification, just because it's A, very good trinket for Enhance anyways, and B, because I still have a lot of Verse in this build, and File actually scales with Verse. For the longest time, I didn't know that. A lot of other people didn't know that as well. Because it does nature damage, so everyone was like, oh, it works great with Mastery, right? And then we tested it, and it actually scales with Verse instead of Mastery, so keep that in mind. That if you want to boost your File damage a little bit, that you need to use Verse and not actually Mastery. By the way, on these sludges that slide through the room here, you can use them with this build to get some more mates and weapon stacks, right? If you frost shock them with Chill to the Core, it permanently resets your wolves. Typically, you would just have an engineer disable them, right? Just as we do right now. But if you happen to not disable them with an engineer, then keep in mind that you can reset your wolves using that the whole time, basically. Which is gonna be very good, because it gives you like more funnel damage into like one target, which is very, very beneficial in this situation. Because these lubricators, if you play them one by one, they take a lot of time to kill them. And yeah, you can just make that a little bit easier, because especially in fortified weeks, if you only play one enemy, let's just say it's a Tormented Lieutenant, or it's like just any enemy that you play without pulling anything on top of it, no one uses cooldowns on those. Like, that's what's typically happening, because everyone wants to pad and do like the most overall damage. No one is gonna use cooldowns on single target enemies, which is why I always, when I play Doomwinds, for example, I always use like Ascendants and Doomwinds on Lieutenants if it's ready, right? I'm not afraid of using that and wasting a little bit of AoE damage, because with the mindset that we want to kill stuff the best way possible and like the quickest way possible, I know that if I hold my cooldowns and they hold their cooldowns for like big packs, we're just gonna overkill the big pack and the cooldowns won't even run out. So I would rather just let them use it on big cooldowns and I use it on the Lieutenant, and that way it just works better that everything dies quickly and we don't overlap our cooldowns and waste them potentially, right? So same goes for this. If lubricators or like the drills earlier, if they need a lot of damage, I'm just gonna use my shit there. Like, overall, it's just gonna help the situation, and it's not gonna make us waste our cooldowns in AoE situations, which is great. So now we're at the second boss that we're fighting here, which is waiting for the tank. And then we're gonna go and we're gonna see, again, second time of this dungeon, how well the single target works. We're probably gonna Bloodlust the second phase, as you want to do it here. And yeah, we will just see how it works. The Resto Shaman actually doing some damage as well, which, by the way, I know I don't mention it that often, but it's actually really important if you're playing a healer in M+, that you actually do damage as well. Most of the healers that I see in dungeons just only heal the whole time, don't do anything else. And if you help with damage as a healer, you legit make the key so much easier for your whole group. And a lot of people don't know that or don't do that, which is kind of sad, because you have so much downtime as a healer anyways that just sending a little bit of damage here and there just makes the key so much easier for your group. So I could definitely recommend to you guys to do that if you're not doing it already. And now we get melee down. We use Bloodlust. I don't have cooldowns. My wolves aren't ready. I definitely didn't time that well. But yeah, like now you can see the Druid and the DK catch up to me a little bit. But in a couple of seconds I will have my wolves again. And then, because Bloodlust is still running, my single target damage will rise a little bit. I actually get a Lightning and a Firewolf. As I said, Firewolf's not really good for this build, but one Lightning Wolf, very good. And you can just see how many Stormbringer procs we get in, because Stormbringer, the chance to trigger Stormbringer is also increased from Mastery, right? So if we play double champion sprint with a lot of Mastery, the procs of Stormbringer that we get will increase as well, which helps our single target damage. Even though the Mastery is what we play to boost our AoE damage with Hailstorm Frostshock, it also has the side effect of increasing our single target damage. And then also we're playing a lot of Haste, which works well with Forceful Winds, Unruly Winds, and Stormflurry. And then you just have a little bit of everything, I feel like, and it creates a cycle that just, it works off of each other, basically. So, yeah, so far, I would say that I'm very happy with this build. And we killed the second boss, again, single target, and I was top damage again. So, the last boss that we need before the end boss is Hakka now. So, we're almost done with the trash. We will move over to the last, like, chapter of the dungeon, do the Hakka one. And then we will see what we actually end up in terms of damage. Also, there's a thing that on the last boss, this is gonna take a little bit to explain it, so I'm just gonna do it now, even though we're not fighting against the last boss yet. On the last boss, if you play Doom Winds, right? I will always use Doom Winds and maybe like Wolves on pull. Then your second Doom Winds will be ready when you go into a portal to kill like one of the ads. But then when you use it on the ad, especially on like tyrannical keys, right, where it's kind of difficult in high tyrannical keys to get the ad down, if you use your Doom Winds there and then you get ported back to the boss, you won't have your Doom Winds for the huge haste buff that you get from all the totems, right? But with this build, it's actually easy, because you can use your stuff on the ad, you can add more of the stuff to the ad to kill it. Like for example, if I get there and I use Wolves, right, and then I notice, oh shit, it's actually not dying quick enough, right? Then I can Fate Transfuse it and kill it. And if I don't, then I just hold Fate Transfusion. And then when I get back, I just have all of my damage anyways during the haste buff. Like I'm not missing out on so much damage because my Doom Winds isn't ready, for example. And chances are that my Wolves are ready again, and then I can just use all of that haste to pump my damage into the last boss, which is really cool. So yeah, we're gonna see what I actually end up doing there. As I said, the key has been a couple of days ago, so I can't really remember how exactly I executed it, but we will just see that in a couple of minutes. For now we play, I think it's the last lieutenant actually that we play here. And again, single target damage, you can see. DK not really doing anything, Boomy not really doing anything. It's actually again me that does the most single target damage here, just from Wolves and the normal rotation. I don't even have Fate Transfusion. It's just you have consistent damage no matter how many enemies you have, basically. And yeah, I'm actually happy to see that it's working out as good as I imagined it. And yeah, I can only highly encourage everyone that wants to give this a try to try it. And then if you tried it, definitely let me know in the comments or on my stream or whatever, how you can get a hold of me. Let me know how you liked it, if you liked the build, if it was fun for you, if you think it's more fun than Doom Winds, if it works better for you than Doom Winds, pretty much anything, any like feedback on the build. I would highly appreciate hearing that from you guys, because I'm really interested in that. or if you have like new ideas of like new builds that we can play. I would also appreciate hearing about that. A lot of people desperately try to make Fire Nova work, which maybe I'm gonna look into that. Maybe we're gonna test something the next couple of streams, and yeah, maybe I put a lot of thoughts into trying to make Fire Nova work. Maybe we can make it work. We will see. Definitely a lot of stuff still to play around with. A lot of like talents, conduits, stuff like that. Like there are so many systems in the game that we have still so much to explore and like experiment with. And I feel like it needs people that are willing to sacrifice doing the best they can do to find something new that can potentially be fun. Like, yeah, as I said, I'm just gonna see if we can find something else, how we can combine like conduits. There are so many systems that there has to be more that we can find that is fun. And yeah, then I will just obviously let you know if I find a new build that we can play. But for now, it's this. And again, this was like 3 targets, and now we pulled a 4th one on top of it. And yet again, top damage here. The overall, we're close to the end of the dungeon. Overall is still at 10k. Absolutely crazy, like for real. We chain pull here a lot. Like we killed 3 of the enemies. We still have the Hoodoo Hexer, and now we just pulled in 3 new enemies. Especially like here, it kind of shows what I said earlier, that you don't lose a lot of damage if you have to move away from enemies. And in this pack there are like some enemies that do like the Blade Storm, right? And you definitely want to get out of the Blade Storm, because especially in fortified keys, that shit can just one-shot you depending on how high the key is. And you can see I can kite away, and just while kiting away, using a Chain Lightning into a Frost Shock, into a Crash Lightning, and then I'm already back to the enemy again, you know? Like it just bridges the downtime better. And yeah, I mean, the result is there, you can see it. DK is just below the tank, while I'm still sitting at 11k DPS. So even though there's a lot of movement, they are not always stacked, stuff like that, you can still sustain like 11k DPS, which it's actually kind of crazy to me how well it's working. I almost killed myself there in the Blade Storm, but I was greeding it a little bit because I thought I could kill it before the Blade Storm killed me, which I was right, but was still kind of sketchy. Yeah, so now we are pretty much, this is the second to last trash pack of the dungeon that we have to play. So after that it's just one more trash pack. It's gonna be Hakka, and then it's gonna be the last boss. We're already at 99. Oh, actually, there we go. The trash is already done. We still have 9 minutes left. With the fail skip in the beginning, we probably lost like 2 minutes or something like that. Maybe even more. Maybe like 3 to 4 minutes. Because we actually killed the lubricators, right? Because we couldn't do the skip again. And you can see we're at 100% trash and have like 5 enemies to kill. So we definitely overdid it on trash now because of the failed skip. So maybe at the end of the day, if we didn't have to kill the lubricators, it would have saved us like 3 to 4 or even 5 minutes. I don't know. But we still have 8 minutes. This is still enough. It's not tyrannical. Bosses are just gonna flop over, most likely. And yeah, so now the last real difficulty of this dungeon would be this pack here, which actually isn't really that difficult. So yeah, again, running away from the Blade Storm, trying to stay out of melee range so I don't die to that, using Chain, using Frost Shock, using Crash. As always, we try to cleave them down evenly. If you can, if it's not like a setback for you to leave like all the enemies alive for a long time, try to not destroy your own cleave targets, because if you have a lot of cleave targets, you can hit more targets with Frost Shock. Hitting more targets with Frost Shock, higher chance to generate Maelstrom weapon stacks, more Maelstrom weapon stacks, less cooldown on wolves, less cooldown on wolves, more damage for you to funnel into specific enemies or on the whole group. So think about the targets that you want to keep alive, where you want to funnel your damage. And some would argue that raging is an affix where you don't want everything to be low at the same time. But if it's a pack where you know that there's not that much damage coming in, you can definitely do that. And yeah, just keep that in mind. Now we're playing Hakka here. I'm using Fate Transfusion before the ad spawns, so the full damage goes into Hakka and isn't soaked by any ads or anything. In terms of wolves, I got Ice and Fire Wolf. The Ice Wolf is pretty good. Fire Wolf, not the biggest fan. Use my Sunder here to hit the Son of Hakka as well. It's hitting me, but again, I'm not focusing it because I don't want to destroy my cleave target to get more of exactly that going, what I just explained. to get lower cooldown. I already got my second wolf, double lightning wolf, very good. Storm Strike is gonna do a lot of damage now, so we can just use all of that to funnel it into our car. Even though we didn't have Bloodlust, even though I'm not really playing a burst build, we already have him below 40%. And you can see, even though I'm doing a little bit less damage, I'm still close to the DK and close to the Moonkin. Sons of Hakka, you can just cleave them with Frost Shocks as well, with Hailstorm, which is very nice. Like getting cleave targets on bosses with this build, definitely very beneficial to get more funnel. And third wolves, this is very good. I got a Lightning Wolf and a Frost Wolf. And yeah, you can see I overtook the Moonkin. The DK probably has cooldowns right now, so it's not going to be possible for me to catch up to him. And yeah, then we kill him right here in like just a second. And 8.3, he did 8.7. I was actually very close to catch up to the DK as well. So yeah, it's just insane how versatile this build is and how much damage you have in pretty much every single situation. And now it's just a little bit of a walk back. We still have like 6 minutes left. And we're just walking over to the last boss. We still have 4 battle resets. Like the run has been relatively clean. Other than like my 2 deaths that were unnecessary. And that 1 wipe from the invis skip. And we still have like 5.5 minutes left. So you can see it's a very forgiving dungeon on an 18. Definitely don't just give up if there's any mistake happening in the key. A lot of people just tend to basically call it, leave the key, whatever. You shouldn't do that in my opinion. Not always, at least. I mean, there are hopeless cases, right? But don't always just leave if something goes wrong. And now we are onto the last boss. As you can see, we're gonna Fate Transfuse that because it's only 1 enemy, so we don't lose like value out of the damage there. I mean, we wouldn't use value out of the damage if it was like 2 targets, but it would spread, and we just want to have it in the boss. So I'm once again, as you can see, the only one doing really damage here in the first phase, because some of them have to hold their cooldowns, maybe, right? Maybe they hold cooldowns for the ad, so they want to make sure that we one-phase it. I don't have to do that. I can already use my second set of wolves here, and that's even a single target fight, and I still already got my second wolves. I'm actually not sure. I think I'm gonna hold them for the intermission now. I could have used them again, I think, but because the intermission is coming up in like 2 seconds, I decided to hold the wolves to make sure that we definitely get the one phase here. I go back left. We use Bloodlust right before we go through, so everyone has the effect. And there they spawn. And we use my wolves. I get a lightning and the frost wolf, very good. And you can just see it's not falling over instantly as it would with Doomwinds. With Doomwinds, this shit would probably die within like 2 storm strikes. It took a little bit longer, but it's fine. More than enough time to kill it. 15 seconds left. The key is still 3.5 minutes. If we one-phase this, then there shouldn't be anything causing us any trouble to time the key. So we're just standing around, just waiting for everyone to get it down. And then once the phase is over, we get pulled over. My wolves, as I told you guys, my wolves are ready again right now. We get the 4-stack haste buff. We get lightning and frost wolf again, perfect. And then we can just start spamming the storm strikes and our normal rotation, and you can just see how much damage we can do. Like, the other people are not even close. We can also Fate Transfuse the boss again during the haste buff, which is nice. And now it's at 14%. We just have to fight down the last like 3% now, and then the boss would be dead. Again, beating DK, beating the Moonkin on this fight. I don't know how well this fight is for like their cooldown timings. Don't play those classes. I'm not 100% sure how good it is for them or how bad, but I can just say that in this dungeon, every boss, every trash pack felt like it could be dealt with properly with this build. And I mean, I would say the damage speaks for itself. In just a second, when the boss dies, we will get the overall damage, and we will see how much DPS I did throughout the key. And there it is, 9.7k overall with this new build. I wouldn't say that's bad. I would say that's pretty good, actually. You could potentially do more with other builds, but that's definitely viable. You can play this in even high keys, I would say. If you think it's interesting, give it a shot if you want to try it. Let me just skip ahead because, as I said, it was on stream and I was reading chat, but at some point I will also check the damage breakdown, so we can see that. There we go, that's the damage breakdown. You can see Frost Shock, almost 18% of our damage was Frost Shock. Double Champion's Brand, big Mastery Frost Shocks, insane. 3.3 million damage, and then Chain Lightning, also buffed from Mastery, a lot of damage as well from all of those Chain Lightnings. And then Wind Fury Attack and Storm Strike, because as I said, we still play Forceful Winds, we still play Stormflurry, and we still play Unruly Winds. There's still a lot of damage coming in from Wind Fury Attacks and Storm Strike. Elemental Raptors, actually insane as well. 1.4 million damage, like melee attacks from the wolves, because we can just call so many wolves the whole time. I'm playing Orc. They get buffed by my Orc Racial as well, which gives attack power, so they do even more damage. And then it's just Sundering, Crash, and all the other stuff, basically. Again, the only thing I would change is probably I would play Badge if I do this again, or what I did when I played it again, instead of the Guardian Trinket. That's something that I would improve. And then I think if I played Badge, this would have been easily over 10k overall DPS. But yeah, the build works. The build is fun. I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope you maybe found fun or interest in trying new things as well. Maybe go a little bit back to the roots. Go a little bit away from just only playing meta, only playing what's best. Try out new things, try to have fun in the game. Come up with new things and share it with people so everyone can have the fun that you're having. With that being said, I thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you give me some feedback in the comments. And then I hope to see you guys in the next video or in a live stream. Take care and stay healthy. And with that being said, peace.